now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. I'm joined by some fantastic guests today to discuss Arsenal's attack. We've lost Gabriel, but we have a host of attackers coming in. Who will replace Gabriel's set-piece threat, his defensive dominance? And also, is the return of potentially 6 attackers more valuable to Arsenal than the loss of 1 centre-back when we have huge depth? Today, I'm joined by the team from Pythag and Boots. I've spoken to these guys before, and they're absolutely incredible. Their knowledge is first class, and I'm very pleased to welcome them both to the show. How are you guys doing? I'll go first to you, Pythag. How's it going?
Always a pleasure to be back. And I think things are going good. We've seen Arsenal top of the table, which is kind of what we were hoping for when we last spoke in the summer. So far, so good.
So yeah, and Omid, welcome to the show as well. This is your first time on here. Could you please give everyone a bit of insight into who you are?
Yep. So I'm also working with Pythag. I'm the Arsenal representative on that front. There's 4 of us. We've got a Liverpool fan, 2 United fans, and I'm the sole Arsenal one. So happy to be on this podcast. I'm a big fan of your work, and happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks for giving up your time to come on. I want to start with a graphic that Pythag shared the last time he was on the show, and it was called Arsenal Nuclear. And at this time, we were looking at Arsenal's attack and how we would set up in the season. And this was an example shared when we were going chasing a goal. Martinelli very wide on the left, Saka left half space, Gyokeres central, Odegaard right half space, and Madueke on the right wing. It did show the real attack and depth and versatility. The reason I've brought this back up is because we've never seen these players fit and on the field together all at once. But it now looks like we're entering into a time of the season when they will all be available. So, Pythag, talk to me about this, because Arsenal have managed a huge injury crisis, still sit at the top of the table, and these players are finally going to be on the pitch together at some time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't envisage, even with all these players fit, that this will happen anytime soon. But what I would hope is that when Arsenal find themselves in a difficult situation, that this could potentially be that option that they use in the last 15 minutes of a game to convert a draw into the 3 points. But what I would say is that we've seen glimpses of little things like, for example, Madueke on the right when he was fit and he was doing really well. And in my opinion, I don't know if you agree, Adam, I actually thought Madueke looked better on the right than he did on the left in what we've seen from him in an Arsenal shirt. I also think, and I think we have to give ourselves credit here, I think we have seen Saka in game roam across into left half spaces and actually make game-changing impacts, where he's probably gone through a phase of the game on the right where he's been a bit quiet, but he's actually got a bit more freedom this season where he's roaming not just into the right half space. We've seen him actually roam across into the left half space and make those impacts within the game.
Yeah, absolutely. A prime example of that was the Olympiacos game. And it was a game where we did need a goal to just see that game out. It was still 1-0 in the 91st minute, as you can see on the screen. And Saka pops up in that space and ultimately killed the game with a very well taken strike. Although I do think the keeper should have done better on this instance. But Omid, what do you think with this? Because we've seen Saka being given a bit more freedom this year. We have seen him pop up in the left. We've seen it against Man City. We've seen it in plenty of other games where Saka's been out wide or in the half space, and he's been able to cause havoc in and around there. So do you think Madueke's return will give him that bit of freedom, because Arteta will finally have a true rotation option for Saka?
I would certainly hope so. I'm very open to quite a few ideas. I'd be happy with Madueke being on the right, Saka on the left. I'd be happy with the other way around, and in-game exchanging flanks, as we saw many times with, for example, Nani and Ronaldo. But if we recall Saka when he was younger, he got man of the match away from home against Man City from left centre mid. So this is a guy who's extremely versatile, yet we've sort of pigeonholed him to become a right winger. He's so good at a right wing role that people just presume he's a right winger. But in actual fact, he's such a versatile player. I don't think we've taken advantage of that necessarily. If you look at his features from the left side of the pitch, it does seem like it's more natural for him. I mean, he was brought up on that side. He wasn't brought up a right winger. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think he deserves to have a bit more free roaming. Does that mean we have to take some away from Odegaard? Potentially. From this clip, it looks like Odegaard's the one who's assisted him. But obviously, the game state's a bit different. It's in the Champions League and 1-0 up with a few minutes to go. But will Odegaard maybe have to curtail his freedom a little bit in order for Saka to have it? We'll have to find out. But to answer your question, yeah, I do want to see Saka roaming more. And it looks like Madueke has been fantastic on that right flank. Just a quick one on Madueke on the left wing. If you look at Leeds, we faced Leeds, and him and Calafiori had a good partnership on the left. And that was pretty much our only threat from open play against Leeds United. So I'm happy with Madueke left or right, in all honesty, and Saka left or right.
Yeah, well, interesting you mentioned that game, because that was a game where we saw Madueke and Calafiori both overlap on each other. We saw Calafiori approach the box, Madueke's going round him. And we saw the same with Calafiori on numerous occasions. And that started in the first minute of that game. There was an instance, I think it was on around 60 seconds. And the two of them were right at the edge of the box, causing problems very, very early on. And it looked like that could be an option. But then obviously Saka gets injured in that game, and suddenly Madueke is exclusively a right winger for us. But during this period, despite having so many attackers out, Arsenal have maintained a high number of touches in the box. And the average number of shots in the box has been very, very high. It's only really Arsenal and City that are the big outliers. This is despite some of our best dribblers, our best box players being out of the team. Pythag, what are your thoughts on this? Because there is going to be a natural shift in how we play. We've played with a lot of control recently because we haven't had the runners and the chaos makers. But you're looking at Gyokeres coming back into the team, and he's finally looking like he's got his groove. Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, Madueke is a player that likes to really run into bodies and cause chaos. And then again, Martinelli. And then you've got Odegaard, who's a high touch number 8, number 10 type player. So again, you've got that mix of control players and chaos merchants.
You do. And I'm not surprised that Arsenal are dominating in those in-box shot and touch averages, purely because you'd always associate Man City and Arsenal as those two teams that I think are the best teams at establishing consistent territory week in, week out. And I think with Liverpool, we even saw last season when they won the title, they would sometimes struggle in the first half, and then Arne Slot would make a tactical change for them to come out stronger second half. Whereas with Arsenal, there's always that consistent feel of them being a very powerful and dominant team in territory in terms of field tilt week in, week out. So I'm not really surprised by that. That said, I think obviously we still need to see more from this attacking force in terms of not just being reliant on set piece play. And funnily enough, I'm doing a segment for Sky tomorrow on Arsenal set piece dominance, which will be very interesting. But I personally think with all those players coming back, the one I'm really looking forward to is Gabriel Jesus, because I feel like he, out of those forwards, is the one that gives me the most sizzle in tight spaces when everything's super congested. I think if Gabriel Jesus, I mean, we're not really expecting him to stay fit for the whole season. I think that's ridiculous to expect from a Gabriel Jesus. But if he can just stay fit for a certain passage of games, just to unlock those tight defenses over a couple of months, that could be enough. That 2-month period could be enough to push Arsenal over the line by the end of the season.
He's looked quite sharp in training as well. So I'm getting hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, he always looks quite sharp in training, but then and he has these 3-week bursts, but it's one of those, how long can he stay fit? And can he stay fit long enough to get his match fitness and sharpness up to speed?
I think you just need 2 months from him. Like, I think expecting anything more from a Gabriel Jesus is just, it's almost ludicrous, I think, because of his injury record. I think as long as you can almost, in Arteta's head, look at him as a joker card where you've got like 5 uses of him before he runs out of juice. It's kind of like, that's how I would look at it.
That's what happened last season. He had a great run against Palace, and it was about 5 games, wasn't it? So hopefully it gets a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, but your squad is stronger this time because obviously Gyokeres is there, you know. So you can use Jesus like that, but then you're almost hoping Gyokeres comes back from this injury, and he should have confidence now because he's almost bedded himself into the league a little bit. So if he comes back mentally he should almost already be further ahead than where he was from the start of the
Just
season.
touching upon this graph super quick. Arsenal are top there, Burnley are bottom. It's no surprise that Arsenal have won the most corners, they've conceded the least, and Burnley have won the least corners. Now, touching upon saying Arsenal need to do more from open play and whatnot, I agree but also disagree, because there was a point last season where Arsenal, I think it was in January, they conceded their first corner in a goal from a corner for goodness knows how long. And then they didn't even score one for about 2-3 months after that. So people are saying, is the juice going to run out? I don't think so. They've already overcome that hurdle last season. And ever since, they've been more dominant.
You
and
say
also,
that, Omid, but just to interrupt you, so I'm going to give a little spoiler, obviously, from the analysis I'm doing tomorrow, but Gabriel, since his arrival in the league, is the most dominant aerial threat that the Premier League's ever seen, right? So he's scored 16 goals from corners since he made his debut for Arsenal, which is 5 more than Van Dijk. He's by head and shoulders the best header of the ball in the world. So for him to be absent, hopefully it's not, I don't, you'll probably tell us how long he's absent for, but if he's out, then it makes it even more imperative that the attack is a bit more, effective from open play, just because no doubt that your set piece threat has diminished just by Gabriel being out. That's not to say that you won't still be effective. Like Marino, someone that could probably still score. But I'm just saying statistically, it does mean your biggest threat is out of the picture.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think if you look at Arsenal last season, when Gabriel was out of the team, we did drop off with that set piece threat. To a degree, we still were a threat from them. However, Gabriel is so dominant. He's got such a big presence in the box, and he does create space for others just by being in the mix. But he is set to be out 1 to 2 months. So given that players never come back in the minimum amount of time listed, I am taking that as Gabriel is out 2 months. And that leads me to my next question, which is it a bigger loss losing your centre-back who gives you that aerial dominance, whilst you've got 2, potentially 3 players that can come in and replace him defensively, versus the addition of 6 attackers coming back that Arsenal haven't been able to use all season? So I'm going to pin that one to you, Omid.
I would say it's a net positive overall. I mean, 6 compared to 1, as big as Gabriel is as a 1, we did look a little bit tired and out of ideas towards the end against Sunderland. We had those 3 matches against bottom half teams. So obviously, Sunderland aren't bottom half this season, but we were running out of ideas. International break came at a perfect time. Gyokeres, he had his best half and then he got injured. Can't wait for Kai Havertz to come back. It feels like Kai Havertz will bring a little bit of what Marino brings and a little bit of what Gyokeres brings. So that might help us sort of use Marino as more of an impact sub. And Gyokeres, I'm not really sure how we're going to balance the Gyokeres Havertz situation, but I can't wait for Martinelli to come back. It looks like he has gone through dips in the past, and as soon as he has a little break from the team and comes back, he fires on all cylinders. So I've got no issues with Martinelli either. Madueke, he's only played 5 games this season in the Premier League, yet he's in the top 10 rank for, I know some people might laugh at this stat, but corners won. And Gyokeres is the only striker in the top 25 players of corners won. That's a striker. Out of the top 25 players of corners won, Gyokeres is the only one. So we're pushing teams back. And yes, Gabriel is a miss. But if we said, was it against PSG? There was a game that we missed Saka. Oh, it was Liverpool last year. We missed Saka against Liverpool. Oh, it was this season, actually. And Rice's corners were a bit off. And, Rice has the best delivery in world football, it feels like at the moment. Saka has top 3, top 5, maybe with Rice, the best corner delivery as well. So as long as you've got the 2 best takers from each side, and we've still got Hincapie, Calafiori potentially to come in, on top of Saliba and Marino, Rice. So we still should have somewhat of a set-piece threat. So to answer your question, I think, yeah, Gabriel's a huge miss, but I'd rather have the 6 attackers back.
Yeah, and I think a big thing with the set pieces has been that they break games open for us. And with the number of attackers that we've got now on the pitch, that shouldn't need as much of an emphasis. That should be something that it's a big bonus to have that, because there are still players that can score from corners for us. However, having 6 attackers that are all competing and all pushing each other to play, that should be an even bigger bonus. And one player that I think we will see a whole new side of with all these returning players is Eberechi Eze. So this was him whenever we had more fit players playing on the left wing. I think this is his second start for the club, athletic club, away from home, and he was playing as a left winger. People criticized Arteta for how they used Eze in this game, but it is very clear that his best moments come when he starts left, gets himself into the half space or that zone 14, and he can really cause havoc from there. He can open his body, he can curl the ball into the corners, or he can play those passes as he's running, as he's gliding across the pitch. You put him in that right half space, suddenly his angles change. He looks like a different player. And even in that game, he had a chance that ball came across. You can see where he starts. He's out left, and he makes his way up the park, and he ultimately should have scored this. Ball comes into the box and played around. This video goes on longer than I thought. Comes back to him, and he completely fluffed his lines here. But you can see where it comes to him. He ended up falling asleep, and where it ends here, you can see the defenders closing in on him, and he should have scored. But it was an example of Eze starting out on the left-hand side and coming back in. You can see from the start of this move how far he is wide. And he had the freedom to move across the pitch. So Pythag, with the likes of Madueke, who is a natural dribbler, stretcher type runner, coming back, and obviously Saka being in there, and Odegaard potentially being in there, how do you see it benefiting Eberechi Eze?
So I think me and Omid are in agreement. We would argue, well, together, that Eze should always be on the left side of the pitch, right? So where we would slightly disagree is I've never really seen Eze as a full-time left wing. I think in certain games you can use him left wing if Calafiori is really bombing on, and let's just say the opposition's in a mid block, so you've got a bit more space to work with, or the opposition's got a high line and Eze can run through in transition, then you can kind of use him as a left winger. I think if you're playing him as a left winger against a low block and Lewis Skelly is the supporting defender and he's going inside, then Eze is having to go inside, then that can get a bit congested. Having said that, the worst place to put him, in my opinion, is right-sided attacking mid, just because I think you nailed it, Adam. Like, I think the angles are just all wrong. Like, he's at his best when he's kind of gliding with the ball, caressing with his feet, and then chopping back onto that right foot, and then either playing a through ball, reverse disguised through ball, or curling it into the top bin. So I think as long as something's going on down that left side, I think that's when Eze is at his best. So in terms of how this benefits Eze, I think we were seeing slight deficiencies when he's like a full-time number 10. And I'm not surprised by this, because obviously when I did my video on Eze, the one thing that I highlighted was that he's not a playmaking number 10. He's not going to control the game in the same mold as an Odegaard. I think Odegaard is, as much as Arsenal fans sometimes want to criticize him, in many ways he's the heartbeat of the club, especially since Xhaka left. Even more emphasis on Odegaard in terms of dictating the rhythm and the flow of Arsenal's possession. When he's out, the team just looks a bit more vertical, straight lines, not as fluid in between the lines. So I think Odegaard there takes the pressure off Eze to become more of a final third threat than have to be more on the ball than he needs to be. That's how I see it.
But that would mean that Rice would have to be the single pivot, because you've got two such attacking eights there with Odegaard and Eze. I mean, Zubimendi will have to be the full guy.
Yeah, but we only briefly saw that, didn't we, when they both played at the same time. So that could possibly be an option, I think, in the games against smaller teams where you can risk having 2 advanced eights. But I was looking at Arsenal's fixture list. It's getting a bit hairy, scary. I think the next few games are pretty tough. So I would be very surprised if he uses 2 eights in those particular games. So I wouldn't be surprised if Zubi and Rice do stay in and one of Odegaard and Eze come out, or Eze's pushed to the left, as Adam's saying, and Odegaard plays in the mid. Because I don't think Odegaard can play on the wing. So I think Eze will probably be the fall guy in terms of having to either change position or come out of the team.
Yeah, and interesting you mentioned Odegaard and verticality. So if you look at some of his passes here, the Newcastle game was one of the big ones. He came on, changed the game. Olympiacos, brilliant game this day. These kind of balls through for Gyokeres. That verticality in the team is something that we haven't really got without him. Zubimendi brings a bit of it. Eze has a bit of it, but not to this level. These passes are so crisp, they're so direct. And despite having him out for so long, Arsenal do top the table for through balls with 40 this season. I think City are second with 35. And it's a big loss not having a player like Martin Odegaard in the team because he gives you all those things. He also gives you volume. He gives you availability to receive at all times. We criticize Odegaard, but when you look at him last season and when he got most of his criticism, he was playing with a lot of ball to feet players. And this year, all the players that I've mentioned that are coming back, they're all players that want to run on, want to stretch the team and give you something different. But the big question is we've got Spurs next, and these players are coming back. Many of them have been out for quite some time. So, Omid, what do you see basically them offering in the Tottenham game?
It would be surprising if Odegaard starts. I think the Norwegian manager said that he's still a little bit of time to go before he plays. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe that's just politics. Who knows? Gyokeres and muscle injury, and he's not really historically had those. So maybe we have to get them off the bench, which I don't mind, because as Arteta likes to call them, finishers. And we see how many goals come from players off the bench. So for me, I'm just going to throw a little bit of a curveball in here. Last season, we played Spurs at the Emirates. It was such a dull affair, except for one player that lit it alive, and that was Miles Lewis-Skelly. That guy has not seen the pitch for a while. And I personally, I'm not sure what you guys think. Ultimately, I think his position is as a left centre mid. And I would not mind at all if that happened in this game. We need solidity. We're losing Gabriel. He's got a bit of strength about him, but you don't want to have him at left back. I think Arteta actually dropped him from left back because of his back post defending. We saw it twice against Villarreal in the pre-season. Obviously, it's just pre-season, but in one of those instances, you could see, it was in the second instance, Marcelo Skelly's head just dropped. He was like disappointed with himself. Maybe he knew it was a weakness. And then as soon as he came on against Man United, and Mbeumo had a huge chance on the back post. So I don't see Skelly being a left back. He was our first choice last year, maybe because Calafiori was injured, but his third choice now. We need to have one of Calafiori or Hincapie at left back for that height, the muscle and whatnot, and potentially both, because left centre back, you'd rather have a left footer. Does that mean Mosquera falls out? So to answer your question, I don't think any of them should start. Maybe Madueke, but again, he's such an explosive player. And in a North London derby where it could get a bit like end-to-end and heated, I would preserve them on the bench for impact, personally speaking.
I think the classic situation that happens with managers is, let's just say a big player comes out of the team, like a Gabriel. What managers tend to do then is, let's just say they move a Calafiori into left centre-back, right? Now, I think Calafiori can do a great job at centre-back, but then you're almost disrupting two parts of your team just because one has broken, if that makes sense. So all the dynamic of Calafiori, I think he's the player that generated the fourth most XG for this Arsenal team, right? So he's clearly a key component of your attacking game. So if you move Calafiori from left back and move him into centre back, and let's just say you bring in a Hincapie who's barely played, right? You've now got two players kind of out of position. I'm not saying Calafiori's out of position, but basically two players now put into brand new first time exposure to new settings in a London derby. Whereas if you put Mosquera in, who whenever he has played at centre back, he's done a really good job, and leave Calafiori at left back, then the only thing that's changed now is Mosquera coming in for Gabriel. But Mosquera's already had a taste of playing in with the Arsenal boys already, so it lessens the risk, if you get what I mean, of a brand new thing happening. So that gives the team a bit more familiarity on the pitch. And I think muscle memory and familiarity, especially in a North London derby, is very, very important. You don't want to spook the players too much, going into that game. So for me, that's the back four I'd probably go with just for this game, whilst just trying to bed long term. Perhaps you want to move Calafiori to centre back, but I think it'd be a bit risky doing it straight away for the North London derby. In terms of the midfield unit, I wouldn't want to disrupt that Zubimendi Rice dynamic. I'd want to keep that in
I'll
there.
still have that, but to be honest, we talk about angles, but if you look at Rice from left centre mid, I really don't like him. I
want that change. So if you are like, keep him in, but just shift Rice to LCM, 100%.
RCM.
Oh, sorry, RCM. Yeah.
But the thing is, if you look at Rice from LCM, every time he cuts in to have a shot, because his whipped shot is just so dangerous. I remember last year against Aston Villa when we lost at home. We might have drawn at home. Watkins scored. He was shooting non-stop and it all got blocked. It feels like teams are really aware of how good he is when he cuts inside and shoots.
Yeah, but it's so predictable, Omid, because he doesn't have a left foot. He doesn't have a left foot. So basically, it's no point having the best curled shot if everyone knows you're going to do it.
That's my point.
Already set up to block it. So it's
and if you look at him from right centre mid, we saw a wonderful whipped cross when Eddie Nketiah scored his hat-trick. I think it was against Sheffield. He assisted there for West Ham United at Anfield. He's got a terrific cross. He's got an engine on him. And Timber, to be honest, I think Timber's been our player of the season, personally speaking. But the amount of overlapping he's been doing compared to what I imagined he would do, it's like tenfold. So I'd rather Rice could sometimes do the overlapping for Saka or Madueke and let Timber maybe come infield a little bit. So I really, really want Rice on the right. Massively so.
Yeah. Although I do think Rice has been given a lot more freedom this season to go right, because Zubimendi is a player that also moves and doesn't just stay in that single pivot the way Thomas Partey did, where it was very much locked on. You close your eyes, you knew where he would be standing. Yeah. Zubimendi gives you options that Arsenal haven't had before, and I think that's one of the big things. But I guess the question for you, Omid, is at centre back, that is going to be the big call on Saturday or Sunday. Who comes in? Who are you picking? Obviously, Pythag's given different options, but you can only pick one. And I don't see Arteta changing more than one piece. I would imagine Calafiori stays at left back and Saliba right centre back, Timber right back, and that left centre back position is the one that's up for grabs.
I would personally choose Hincapie. He's come in. He's got a big reputation. He's feisty. He's aggressive. He's got a lot of the mental makeup that Gabriel has. And what sort of, like, if he's not going to... And also, about this North London derby thing, sometimes it's actually better when you know it's going to be chaotic anyway, just to have a few pieces that are surprising. I don't always think stability is the way when it comes to that, especially if you're at home, because it's going to be chaotic. And we don't even know what Thomas Frank is going to do. So if anything, doing something that Thomas Frank doesn't expect might benefit us. And Mosquera, he's come in and he's come in with low expectations and he's, exceeded those expectations. He's been very impressive, but he's come in moments where, there have been injuries, so you've come on as a sub and whatnot. Now all the highlights and spotlight will be on him. I think he's got the least experience out of all of them. Hincapie has been there. He's won he went undefeated in Bundesliga.
He never played in a back four though, Omid. So Hincapie always played as the wide centre back in a back three, and then he was given freedom to basically get forward as a left back. Really, so he's never.
It's very similar to Calafiori's role at Bologna, where
but at least with Calafiori, he's had that experience of being a proper centre back for Italy, for example, and he shone there.
Whereas Mosquera had played 90 odd games as a starter for Valencia.
Yeah,
and whilst Valencia are struggling as a club now, they're still a huge club with big expectations. So,
and he was brilliant for them. Like, you never heard a bad word about. I mean, hence why he was very heavily thought of before he came to Arsenal, because of the impression he'd made as a centre back for Valencia.
We'll have to see, but I do sometimes see a bit of aerial weakness with him so far. He needs to fill out into his frame a little bit more. But I've always seen Mosquera as the like-for-like with Saliba. I've seen him as the Saliba alternative. So we'll have to wait and see. Look, last year or 2 years ago, even maybe 3, but we used to be, as soon as Saliba or Gabriel were out, it's Rob Holding. Okay, so we're not in that position anymore. So
yeah, and I think that's the big thing that to remember. We are in a point now where we've got real quality. We're talking about a Ecuador international that's shown on international duty. We're talking about Mosquera, who's Spain under 21s. He gets more game time. Who knows? He could be a full international. But these players are quality that are coming in. It's not a Rob Holding who couldn't even get a game in the championship. It's a big, big difference. And with the insurge of attackers that is about to come, we're going to see a very different Arsenal. But the one thing I do have to bring up is Spurs are very good at set pieces. They're a club that are also performing very well away from home. So final question, Pythag, is do Arsenal have the ability to defend set pieces to the same capacity without Gabriel? And how do you see us dealing with a Spurs team that overperform on the road compared to at their own ground?
So I think obviously missing Gabriel from a defensive point of view, of course, you're going to be slightly weaker, I think, defending those set pieces. But if there's any team that can cope with that, it should be an Arsenal, because you've still got the likes of Declan Rice strong in the air. Let's just say Kai Havertz. Is he going? I don't know if he's fit for this game, but let's just say him or Marino were to be starting in the team. You've still got those aerial presence within the team. I think with Tottenham, you've got to realize they are struggling big time in terms of their XG generally. So they would be reliant on the set pieces, but they're a team that's struggling to create and score goals against the majority of teams in the Premier League, and yet they're coming up against the tightest defense in the league as well. So on paper, they should be struggling to score goals against you. And so for me, if I'm an Arsenal fan, I should be confident that you can see them out from a defensive perspective. I think as long as you put bodies on Kudus, that's the key to stopping Tottenham. Put loads of bodies around him, so then once he's having to give away the ball to other people within the team, they're less of a threat in general. I think with Brendan Johnson, you just got to make sure you've got a left back, if he's playing on the right, that is good at defending space and is positionally aware, because Brendan Johnson is at his most dangerous when he plays that 1-2 and he's running through. A bit like Martinelli, but for them. So I think if you can defend space against him, that's the way to stopping them. Richarlison's a bit of a, you never know how he's going to really play, like, to be totally honest with you. But I personally think someone like Mosquera could do a good job on Richarlison. I think someone like Saliba could be caught napping by Richarlison just because he's quite sleepy, lackadaisical. And if Richarlison's emotional or motivated, I could see him catching. But Mosquera seems to me the type of lad who's quite switched on. So that's why I think he'd be a good matchup against that.
Don't forget about the left wing against Man United when they changed.
Oh, that's the thing though. So Odegaard is probably their biggest threat. But having said that,
Udogie and Odegaard.
Who's your best player? Timber. So Odegaard versus Timber is a fascinating battle, to be honest, because that for me is a proper litmus test of Odegaard, because Spurs fans are almost clinging on now. They kind of want Odegaard to kind of revive their season just because their left flank's been so poor. If Odegaard has a great game against a Timber, that's like, whoa, you guys have got yourself a talent here. If he gets put to sleep by Timber, then it's kind of like says a lot about Tottenham squad and where they're headed this season.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's a good point to leave it. And big thanks for both of you for coming on the show. Could you please tell everyone where they can find the two of you?
Well, you can find me and Omid at Pythagoras in Boots. In our socials, we're called Pythag in Boots. And we have obviously a podcast coming out every Monday as well. So do check us both out on that podcast.
Perfect. Well, massive thanks to everyone that's listened. Huge thanks to two fantastic guests for coming on the show. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel and drop us a comment and tell us what you think. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.
You're now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.